You want to put a basketball court on your roof? She finally asked. You realize this is going to be complicated, right? He said, peering at my roof with a critical eye. And expensive? I'm aware, I said, but I'm also determined, and I'm willing to pay for the best. After a long day at the office, there was nothing I enjoyed more than shooting a few hoops in my driveway. It was my way of de-stressing, of getting a little exercise, of connecting with a simpler, less complicated time in my life. The thump, thump, thump of the ball on the concrete, the rhythmic squeak of my sneakers, the satisfying swish of the net. It was a meditative ritual, a mini vacation from the demands of adulthood. It wasn't anything fancy, just a portable basketball hoop, a concrete driveway, and the satisfying swish of the net. It was my way to unwind after work, to get a little exercise, to relive my somewhat mediocre high school basketball days. Apparently, in this neighborhood, that was a declaration of war, I thought, as I practiced my admittedly rusty jump shot. The hoop was one of the first things I'd installed when I moved in, a symbol of my commitment to maintaining some semblance of work-life balance, a small reminder that there was more to life than spreadsheets and conference calls. I should have known that any activity involving physical exertion and potential fun would attract the attention of the HOA's resident joy killer. I just didn't realize how quickly or how vehemently that attention would manifest. The knock on the door was sharp, insistent, and utterly devoid of any hint of neighborly warmth. It was the knock of someone on a mission, someone with a complaint, someone who probably enjoyed enforcing rules more than breathing. Barbara Simmons. Picture a woman whose idea of a good time was attending HOA meetings and enforcing rules, whose spirit animal was a tightly wound ball of yarn, and whose favorite pastime was making other people's lives miserable. She was the self-appointed fun police of neighborhood name, the queen of killjoys, and, unfortunately for me, the head of the Architectural Review Committee. She stood on my porch, ramrod straight, her arms crossed, her lips pursed in a disapproving frown. Her sensible shoes and neatly pressed slacks seemed to radiate disapproval. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice as sharp and brittle as dry twigs. "I'm afraid I must address a matter of grave concern." She paused, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. "Your basketball hoop." "My basketball hoop?" I replied, feigning innocence. "What about it?" "It's unacceptable," she declared, her eyes narrowing. "It's cluttered. It's a distraction. It's a nuisance. It simply does not conform to the aesthetic standards of our community." She gestured vaguely towards the hoop, as if it were some kind of monstrous, offensive structure. "It makes the neighborhood look untidy." "It's a basketball hoop, Barbara," I said, trying to remain calm. "Kids play with it. I shoot hoops sometimes. It's recreation." "Recreation," she scoffed, "should be conducted in designated recreational areas, Mr. Carter, not in the driveway where it can be seen by everyone. It's unneighborly." Barbara, true to form, didn't just complain to me directly. She filed an official complaint with the HOA, citing a rule I hadn't even known existed. Bylaw 7.4. C. Driveway basketball hoops prohibited. Apparently, the previous owners of my house had enjoyed some sort of grandfathered-in exception, an exception that had expired the moment I, the unsuspecting hoop enthusiast, had moved in. I checked the HOA rules, the dreaded binder of regulations that I'd skimmed and promptly ignored when I'd purchased the house. And there it was, in black and white. Driveway basketball hoops are prohibited due to their unsightly appearance and potential for noise pollution and neighborhood disruption. My internal reaction was a mixture of annoyance, frustration, and a growing sense of disbelief. Were these people serious? Was a basketball hoop really such a threat to the peace and tranquility of neighborhood name? This was insane, I thought. I tried to reason with Barbara. I explained that I mostly played in the evenings, after work, and that I always made sure to keep the noise level down. I pointed out that several other houses in the neighborhood had basketball hoops, though, admittedly, none were quite as visible as mine. I even offered to paint the hoop a more neutral color, though the thought of a beige basketball hoop made me shudder. But it was no use. Barbara Simmons was not interested in reason, in logic, or in the concept of compromise. She was interested in rules, in regulations, and in enforcing her narrow definition of acceptable recreational activities upon everyone within her reach. The basketball hoop, in her mind, was a symbol of chaos, a challenge to her authority, and it had to be removed. The official notice arrived a few days later. A crisp white envelope containing a sternly worded letter and a threat of escalating fines. I had 48 hours to remove the unauthorized basketball hoop or face the consequences. I stood in my driveway staring at the hoop, the setting sun casting long shadows across the concrete. I could comply, of course. I could take down the hoop, surrender to Barbara's demands, and return my driveway to its previous state of hoopless conformity. But something inside me rebelled. This wasn't just about a basketball hoop. It was about principle. It was about the right to enjoy my own property, to pursue my own hobbies, without being harassed by a power-hungry, fun-hating busybody. If Barbara didn't want a basketball hoop on my driveway, then fine. I'd find somewhere else to put it. Somewhere unexpected. Somewhere higher, I thought, my gaze lifting towards the roof of my house. A slow, mischievous grin spread across my face. An idea, audacious and wonderfully absurd, began to take shape in my mind. A full-sized basketball court. On the roof. It was recreational, wasn't it? It was technically not on the driveway. And it was, without a doubt, the most gloriously inappropriate response to Barbara Simmons' demand for conformity that I could possibly imagine. I'd need to check local building codes, of course, but I was fairly certain there was nothing that specifically prohibited rooftop sports facilities. Barbara Simmons, you want a war on hoops? You've got one. Prepare to be dunked on from above, I declared internally, a surge of defiant energy coursing through me. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to unleash the full force of my rooftop basketball rebellion. My decision to build a full-size basketball court on my roof was not a decision I took lightly. It required research, planning, and a healthy dose of reckless abandon. I started by exploring the internet, searching for examples of rooftop courts, hoping to find some precedent, some inspiration, some evidence that I wasn't completely insane. My browser history went from driveway basketball hoop reviews to rooftop basketball court construction and structural engineering for dummies in record time. I chuckled as I scrolled through images of luxurious penthouse apartments, high-rise hotels, and even a few private residences that had, indeed, managed to incorporate basketball courts onto their roofs. It was possible. It had been done. But it was, clearly, not a common undertaking. Most of the examples I found were on commercial buildings or ultra-expensive homes designed by architects with unlimited budgets and a disregard for conventional suburban aesthetics. I learned about the importance of structural reinforcement, the need for specialized court surfaces, and the challenges of installing lighting and backboards on a sloped roof. I realized that this was not a DIY project. This was going to require professional help, a team of experts who could turn my absurd vision into a reality. But the more I researched, the more determined I became. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about principle. It was about freedom. It was about proving that even in the most restrictive of neighborhoods, a little bit of creativity, and a lot of audacity, could go a long way. My first call was to an architect, a woman named Sarah, different Sarah from the billboard story, who I'd found through a local referral. I explained my situation, the HOA, the driveway hoop ban, and my plan for a rooftop basketball court. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You want to put a basketball court on your roof?" she finally asked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and amusement. "That's right," I said. "Full-sized, with lights and a sound system." "And this is to annoy your HOA?" "Let's just say it's a creative solution to a zoning dispute," I replied. Sarah laughed. "Okay," she said. "I'm intrigued. Send me your address and I'll come take a look." Sarah, it turned out, was not your typical architect. She had a passion for unconventional projects, a love of challenging designs, and a healthy disregard for stuffy suburban norms. She arrived at my house, took one look at the roof, and grinned. "This is going to be fun," she said. Next, I needed a structural engineer. Sarah recommended a man named Mark, again, different Mark, who specialized in challenging structural modifications. Mark, a gruff, no-nonsense engineer with a surprisingly dry sense of humor, listened to my plan with a mixture of skepticism and grudging admiration. "You realize this is going to be complicated, right?" he said, peering at my roof with a critical eye. "And expensive?" "I'm aware," I said, "but I'm also determined, and I'm willing to pay for the best." Mark shrugged. "All right," he said. "Let's see if we can make this crazy idea work." With Sarah and Mark on board, my dream team was assembled. They were the architects of my rebellion, the engineers of my revenge, and the enablers of my increasingly elaborate plan to drive Barbara Simmons completely insane. The construction process was, to put it mildly, a spectacle. It began with the arrival of a crane, a massive, towering machine that dwarfed the surrounding houses and immediately drew the attention of the entire neighborhood. Steel beams, specially reinforced to support the weight of the court, were hoisted onto the roof, creating a sturdy, industrial-looking framework. Next came the court surface, a professional-grade, shock-absorbing material designed for outdoor use. It was laid down in sections, carefully fitted together to create a seamless, perfectly level playing surface. Then came the lights, stadium-style LEDs, powerful enough to illuminate the entire court, and I hoped a significant portion of Barbara Simmons's bedroom. And finally, the backboards, two gleaming, regulation-size glass backboards mounted on sturdy steel posts, ready for some serious rooftop hoops action. The noise was considerable, the disruption unavoidable, and the sheer absurdity of the project was impossible to ignore. My quiet suburban street was transformed into a construction zone, a hive of activity, a testament to the power of one man's determination to play basketball and annoy his HOA president. The neighbors, as always, were watching. They'd gather on their lawns, whispering to each other, pointing and staring. Some were amused, some were bewildered, and some were probably just waiting for the whole thing to collapse. Barbara Simmons, of course, was furious. She'd storm over, her face a mask of rage, and demand to know what was going on. "Just some roof repairs, Barbara," I'd reply, with a perfectly innocent smile. "Making sure everything is structurally sound. You know how it is." I kept up the pretense that it was just general maintenance, claiming the work was to fix leaks and reinforce the structure. Her eye twitches were becoming legendary. She knew I was up to something, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. And that, of course, was the beauty of the plan. With the court itself complete, it was time for the finishing touches, the details that would elevate my rooftop basketball haven from merely impressive to absolutely gloriously over the top. First, I installed a high-end sound system, complete with powerful speakers strategically positioned around the perimeter of the court. This wasn't just for playing music. This was for creating an atmosphere. And then I found it. The perfect audio accompaniment to my rooftop basketball court. A collection of sound effects from the NBA on TNT broadcasts. The squeak of sneakers, the roar of the crowd, the announcer's voice booming, "He's on fire!" All triggered by motion sensors strategically placed around the court. I spent an evening programming the system, carefully syncing the sound effects to specific actions. A successful shot would trigger a chorus of cheers and applause. A missed shot would elicit a groan of disappointment. And for particularly impressive dunks, which admittedly were unlikely, given my limited vertical leap, I programmed the system to play the iconic NBA on TNT theme song. It was magnificent. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. And it was all completely 100% HOA loophole exploiting, as far as I could tell. I thought, as I tested the system, the sounds of a professional basketball game echoing through the quiet suburban night. It was the final, glorious touch, the cherry on top of my rooftop revenge Sunday. And I couldn't wait to see Barbara Simmons's reaction. The grand opening of my rooftop basketball court, or as I preferred to call it, the Sky Arena, was a moment I'd been eagerly anticipating. I'd timed it perfectly, ensuring that Barbara Simmons would be taking her usual evening stroll past my house just as I was testing the lights and sound system for the first time. And her reaction? It was glorious. It was beyond my wildest expectations. It was a meltdown of epic proportions, a Karen-esque explosion of rage and disbelief that would forever be etched in the annals of suburban legend. She stopped dead in her tracks, her sensible walking shoes rooted to the sidewalk, her eyes fixed on the spectacle unfolding above her. Her jaw dropped, her mouth opened and closed wordlessly, and her face went through a series of colors that I didn't even know were humanly possible. Then, the screaming started. This is unthinkable!" she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that could shatter glass and probably set off car alarms. She stormed towards my house, her fists clenched, her perfectly coiffed hair slightly askew. "You've turned your house into a basketball stadium. It's an abomination." I emerged from behind the glass backboard, a basketball tucked under my arm, a picture of calm, unruffled composure. "Good evening, Barbara," I said, my voice dripping with feigned politeness. "I see you've noticed my roof modifications. What do you think? I was going for a sporty yet functional aesthetic." "It's on the roof!" she roared, her face now a shade of purple that I'd previously only seen on particularly ripe eggplants. It's preposterous. It's dangerous." "It's a recreational facility, Barbara," I corrected her gently. "Designed to promote fitness and community engagement, and, as I'm sure you'll recall, the HOA banned driveway hoops. This is not on the driveway." I bounced the basketball, letting it thump against the rooftop court surface, the sound echoing through the quiet evening air. "Besides," I added with a pointed look, "there's nothing in the bylaws about rooftop recreation." Watching Barbara's face contort with rage and disbelief was more satisfying than any three-pointer I'd ever made, I thought, struggling to suppress a laugh. She sputtered, she fumed, she threatened, but it was all for naught. The Sky Arena was here to stay. And Barbara Simmons was powerless to stop it. The sound effects, triggered by my, admittedly terrible, dribbling, added a layer of surreal humor to the scene, punctuating her outrage with the squeak of sneakers and the roar of a non-existent crowd. Barbara, predictably, called an emergency HOA meeting, demanding the immediate removal of my rooftop monstrosity. She envisioned a swift condemnation, a unanimous vote to dismantle my court, a restoration of order, and beige to Sunridge Estates. She was, as usual, in for a rude awakening. The meeting, held in the same beige-walled community center room, was a scene of utter chaos. Barbara, looking increasingly frantic and disheveled, presented a PowerPoint presentation titled "The Dangers of Rooftop Basketball." The presentation was a masterpiece of fear-mongering and hyperbole, filled with blurry photos of my court, exaggerated claims about its structural instability, and a series of increasingly unlikely scenarios. Slide 1. Basketballs falling from the roof and injuring innocent pedestrians. With a picture of a cartoon basketball hitting a stick figure on the head. Slide 2. Excessive noise pollution disrupting the peace and quiet of the neighborhood. With a picture of a sound wave labeled "Danger." Slide 3. Attracting undesirable elements, teenagers, to our community. With a picture of a group of silhouetted figures looking suspiciously like they were having fun. Slide 4. The complete and utter destruction of property values. Her arguments were met with a mixture of skepticism, amusement, and outright hostility. The other HOA members, it turned out, were not as enthusiastic about banning rooftop basketball courts as Barbara had hoped. Some were secretly impressed by my audacity. Others were simply tired of Barbara's constant complaining. And a few, I suspected, were secretly hoping I'd invite them up for a game. While Barbara fumed and plotted, the rest of the neighborhood was embracing the Sky Arena with open arms. What had started as a source of curiosity and amusement quickly became a point of local pride, a quirky landmark, a symbol of Sunridge Estates' slightly rebellious spirit. Teenagers, initially drawn by the novelty of a rooftop basketball court, started showing up for friendly games, their laughter and shouts echoing through the neighborhood, much to Barbara's dismay. Local influencers, always on the lookout for the next viral sensation, posted videos of themselves playing on the court, praising its unique design and insane views. Even the local school's basketball coach contacted me, asking if he could use the court for occasional practice sessions. He claimed the high-altitude training would improve his team's stamina. I didn't have the heart to tell him my roof was only about 20 feet off the ground. And then, the ultimate validation. A retired NBA player who happened to be visiting relatives in the neighborhood saw the court on social media and asked if he could come shoot around. He spent an afternoon on my roof, draining three-pointers, signing autographs, and generally adding to the growing legend of the Sky Arena. It was a surreal, unforgettable experience, a testament to the power of a good idea and a healthy dose of petty revenge. Barbara, desperate to regain control, tried one final desperate maneuver. She proposed a new HOA rule, a retroactive rule, specifically banning rooftop recreational structures, and any activity that might potentially annoy Barbara Simmons, but it was too late. The HOA's lawyer, the long-suffering Mr. Henderson, explained in excruciating detail that the Sky Arena was grandfathered in. It had been built before any such rule existed, and therefore it was exempt from any new regulations. He also pointed out that any attempt to force its removal would likely result in a costly and embarrassing lawsuit, a lawsuit that the HOA would almost certainly lose. He even, somewhat hesitantly, suggested that the HOA might want to consider embracing the court, perhaps even sponsoring a neighborhood basketball tournament. Barbara's face at this point was a study in apoplectic rage. She sputtered, she fumed, she threatened, but it was all for naught. The HOA, sensing the shift in power, voted against her proposed rule change. And then, the final humiliation. Barbara's own grandchildren, who'd been visiting for the weekend, snuck out of her house and joined a pickup game on my rooftop court. They were, I must admit, surprisingly good. And Barbara, watching from her window, could only seethe in silent fury as her own flesh and blood enjoyed the very thing she'd tried so desperately to destroy. The Sky Arena was victorious, and Barbara Simmons was utterly, completely, and gloriously defeated. The reign of Barbara Simmons, the terror of driveway basketball hoops, the scourge of suburban fun, came to an end not with a bang, but with a whimper. After the disastrous HOA meeting, the viral fame of the Sky Arena, and the ultimate betrayal of her own grandchildren, she finally cracked. She resigned from the HOA, her letter of resignation a masterpiece of passive-aggressive self-pity, blaming everyone but herself for her downfall. She claimed she was the victim of a coordinated campaign of harassment, a neighborhood-wide conspiracy to undermine her authority, and a general decline in standards of decency and good taste. Nobody bought it. Within weeks, a for sale sign appeared in front of her meticulously manicured and utterly joyless house. She sold it quickly, at a slight loss. The market, it seemed, was not as enthusiastic about beige conformity as she was, and moved away, presumably to inflict her brand of fun-hating tyranny on some other unsuspecting community. Her departure was met with a collective sigh of relief, followed by a spontaneous neighborhood block party held naturally on my rooftop basketball court. The Sky Arena, once a source of controversy, became a local legend, a symbol of the neighborhood's newfound freedom and a testament to the power of creative rebellion. It was more than just a basketball court. It was a statement, a landmark, a giant middle finger to the forces of HOA tyranny. People would drive from miles around just to see it, to take pictures, to marvel at the sheer audacity of building a full-sized basketball court on a residential roof. It became a popular backdrop for social media posts, graduation photos, and even a few, surprisingly athletic, engagement announcements. The local school's basketball team, with the coach's blessing and a signed waiver from every parent, started using the court for occasional practice sessions. The high-altitude training, as the coach jokingly called it, became a team-building exercise, a unique and memorable experience for the players. Even the local news outlets, who'd initially reported on the court as a quirky suburban oddity, started referring to it as a neighborhood treasure and a symbol of community spirit. The Sky Arena had transcended its origins as an act of petty revenge. It had become something bigger, something better, something legendary. To celebrate our victory over Barbara and the HOA, and to officially inaugurate the Sky Arena as a community asset, I decided to host a 3-on-3 neighborhood basketball tournament. It was a glorious, chaotic, and utterly ridiculous event. We had teams of teenagers, teams of adults, even a team of retirees, who, surprisingly, were quite competitive. We had music, food, drinks, and, of course, the constant thump-thump-thump of basketballs on the rooftop court. The tournament was a resounding success, a celebration of community, a testament to the power of sports, and a giant, collective screw you to Barbara Simmons and her anti-fun agenda. Even the former NBA player showed up, offering pointers to the kids and participating in a celebrity shootout. The event concluded with an awards ceremony. I'd had custom-made trophies created, featuring a miniature basketball hoop perched on top of a roof, and a promise to make the tournament an annual tradition. With Barbara gone, and the clear community support, the HOA became a thing of the past. The old rules were scrapped, and in their place, an encouragement for community and fun activities. And so I remained, the unlikely ruler of my rooftop kingdom, the accidental champion of suburban fun. The Sky Arena stood as a proud monument to my victory. A constant reminder that even the most powerful HOA could be defeated with a little bit of creativity, a lot of determination, and a regulation-sized basketball court on your roof. It was a warm summer evening. I was standing on the court, spinning a basketball on my finger, practicing my still mediocre jump shot. The stadium lights were on, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, and the faint sound of laughter and conversation drifted up from the streets below. A new neighbor, a young man who'd just moved in down the street, walked by. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm new to the neighborhood. I just have to ask, what's with the basketball court on your roof?" I smiled. "It's a long story," I said, "but the short version is, I had a disagreement with the HOA about a driveway hoop." He laughed, intrigued. "Well," he said, "it's certainly unique." "It is," I agreed. "It is." Who knew that a driveway basketball hoop and a burning desire for revenge could lead to all this? I guess sometimes you just gotta build a basketball court on your roof to find your peace, I thought, as I took another shot, the ball arcing through the air and swishing perfectly through the net. I spun the ball on my finger again, a feeling of quiet satisfaction washing over me. To the rooftop court of neighborhood name, may it forever stand as a monument to the triumph of fun over conformity, and a warning to all future HOA tyrants